copies do you think? Google it and find out. So somebody Google. Just want you to be aware of what happens in book sales in the country before you meet an amazing author this evening. What else can you tell me about this evening's speaker?
He's launched some books and he's going to talk about inventions.
What else can you talk about him? What else did you pick up from his CV?
I've just seen that he's launched some books and he's going to talk about frugal inventions and that's.
Who else has come prepared to understand whom you're speaking, whom you're listening to?
He's advisor in Silicon Valley, and everyone mentioned he has launched the book, and he is also the part of World Economic Forum and Economic Forum Global Future Council, and he is French American and born in Pontiac.
Why should the Monday evening 5 p.m. class have special interest in him? Monday evening 5 p.m. class, who is sitting here? Who is attending the study center class? Why should you have special interest in it? You are attending these classes.
I think here is trying to talk about this because more of frugal innovation.
No. By studying his background, why do you think the Monday evening 5 p.m. class should take special interest in him?
He also has interest in Vedanta and because now he has many of that knowledge.
He has deep understanding of Vedanta, the Upanishads, and Indian ethos and philosophy. And that's something very unique about him, that he is a student of Vedanta. He seems to feel, as I was talking to him this morning, that all the management education is based on the American model. And it is like India, 70 years after independence, is still a colonial. All our minds are imprisoned by Western thought. All the books we read are American, all the MBA programs teach American. So one of his thinking is that we are still behaving like we are ruled by others. We don't have a way of learning from our own culture. We don't study our own Upanishads, our own Gita. We study all this bullshit from the United States. None of us educate ourselves on our own great power, which the Western mind is now turning to because they want to have better understanding of leadership, so they want to study the Upanishads. The top minds of United States are turning to this country, and we don't have even the patience and the understanding of our own culture. One of his missions is to educate young minds in India to make them aware of their own culture and to understand the power of the unlimited and fantastic source of wisdom in this country. The whole world is turning to the East to understand the nature of innovation and creativity, which comes from deep inside. So the West learns from us, perfects it, makes it into a technique, sells million copies of books. If you study books in America, we do millions of copies based on leadership studies. Many of them are inspired by thoughts that originated from this country. Understand? How many copies this book has sold? Checking, okay. Nanda Nilekani's book, how many copies did it sell? Anybody? How many of you read Nanda's book? Anybody read? How many of you have you read any book which reimagines India in any positive way for the future? Who would like to talk about a book that develops a vision for this country? Anybody? How many of you have read a book, right?
I read this book by Sashi Tharoor very long time, about 5-6 years ago, where he speaks about how powerful India is and the ethos of Indian culture, but how we can, like you said, brainwashed sort of by the Western world. If we go back to our roots and we use our power, as in the demographic dividend, or in terms of maybe the culture that it teaches us, we can easily ace all the Western countries.
How many of you have read Dr. Abdul Kalam's book?
India 2020. India 2020.
How many of you have read Dr. Kalam's book? Raise your hand, please. Yes? 3 people, 4 people. Who else here has read about any book which talks about a powerful vision for India, which inspires you to reimagine this country? Come on, who's read anything about that?
I have read London and College pretty much in India, but that was a bit. There was one of the whole book. And he
Tell me some of his thoughts.
That he has given emphasis on this UID Aadhaar, because at that time he was looking after that, and same time he has released this book also. He started from there, and then as per him we need to reduce this red tape which is there in our bureaucracy. He talks about that also, and these are the few things which I can recall.
How many of you have heard of somebody called William Bissell? Yeah, talk about William Bissell.
He wrote the book Making India Work. In it, he actually, what inspires me most reading that book is he actually talks about poverty, taxation, demographics, bureaucracy, how it can be challenged in a new way. And the best part I liked about taxation, so he says in India we tax for the productivity, but rather you tax for wealth accumulation. So generally, like if you have houses and like people, very rich people who keep on accumulating houses, so the house tax is very minimum, which is being costed. And rather, if a company produces a lot, then he will be taxes for that productivity, which actually contributes to your GDP. So that really actually inspired me to think it in a different terms. And then how he has shared different views on tackling the problems in India.
Very good. Give her a big hand. Who is William Bissell? Who is William Bissell? Don't know. Who is William Bissell? No. How many of you have heard of Fab India? Fab India? So he owns Fab India. You buy his product, you go to his shop, but don't know the man who started it. He made the weavers shareholders of his company. And he came to Soil a few years back as a part of the leadership series. You should watch his tape. Please come now. I was just using the few minutes as a way of having some fun with students. And we were talking about people like William Bissell. Yeah. No, you got caught in some traffic from Cyber City, I believe. So you experienced the Uber issues in Gurgaon. Yes. No issue. I am a great friend in welcoming our guest speaker. You all know his background and it's an interesting point. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. He'll present it. So I was just asking them that if a book is successful in India, a management book, how many copies does it sell? So one student said 1 million copies. So I said, well, that's what Mr. Chetan Bhagat may be selling his stories. But he said a management book, if it is successful, is 5,000 copies.
2,000 is already.
Yeah, 2,000 is already a success. 5,000 is considered a benchmark, and his book sold 100,000 copies. So which is very unique for a book in India. I just the short interaction I had with him, I was very struck by your authenticity, by your inspiration to say on this visit to India, you wanted to spend time with the young people And you wanted to carry this message that don't let our minds get imprisoned by only these thoughts of these big global companies and powers which are a way of influencing our minds. And that we should think for ourselves who this great country is all about. And I was very inspired by the few things that you talked, and I'm hoping that we will have more time to spend with you. But right now, I'm just going to enjoy you. Everybody has read your background, they've read about your books that you've written, and the amazing stuff that you do globally. And of course, a dear friend of mine who's like my younger brother, Dr. Prasad Kaipa, is the co-author of the book with him, that which is all, that the whole concept is not just to be smart, but to really have the wisdom. So I just want to end with a quote from Rumi, which I'm very fond of before I ask him to speak. Between my words and his presence, wisdom flows. In the empty chatter of my mind, I lose it. In the still silence of myself, I find it. I want you to connect the talk today. Day after tomorrow, you will be going to these beautiful places of worship, where you will be spending time with your inner silence. And I hope out of that inner silence, you will be wiser about the source of all goodness inside you. Because each one of you is such a wonderful person. There is so much of love inside each one of you, so much of truth, so much of creativity, so much of amazing energy. And I hope you will be reminded of that when you sit in silence. But in order to prepare our minds, there is a wonderful leader with us today who will, Navi is going to take us into, he has many, of course, wonderful titles also, like the fellow at the Judge Business School and all kinds of interesting titles, and one of the future top leaders of the world and all those kind of titles. But beyond that, his whole humanity and his oneness with that wisdom inspired me to share about Ruby's quote. Thank you. And now over to our speaker.
Great. Thanks a lot. Thank you very much. And again, my sincere apologies. I've been traveling for 15 days non-stop, 70 days across India. This is my last day here in Delhi before I head back to the US. So I'm so thrilled to be here with you this evening to conclude my trip and share my thoughts on this topic that I've been studying for the past now 10 years now, which is the subject of frugal innovation. And so, if you want, yeah. Okay, so can everyone hear me in the back? Yes. Okay, perfect. All right, so I'm so delighted to be here with you this evening. I'm flying back in a few hours, but I really felt that it will be a kind of capping stone to end this trip with a talk at Soil. I learned so many great things about Soil, including from my co-author Prasad Kaipa, who actually said wonderful things about a very unique education we're having here. We wrote the book together called From Smart to Wise, and I've spoken to a lot of smart people during the last 2 weeks in India, but you actually represent probably the first batch of wise leaders I've addressed. So a great honor, and thanks for accommodating my request. And I want you to look first at these two words, frugal innovation. You rarely see these two words in the same sentence, right? Think about, for example, an iPhone, which costs $600. Probably the next model will cost $1,000. Something as innovative as an iPhone is far from being frugal, affordable. And by the same token, if you think about innovation, you think about big R&D labs, billions of dollars spent in R&D. So you also don't think innovation can be done frugally. And my kind of hope is that by the end of this talk, we'll realize that it is possible to actually not only innovate frugally, that is limited resources, but also the kind of innovation that we have to generate as a nation in India has to be affordable and sustainable. So that's why these two words, and India actually is the land where we practice syncretism, where dualities actually can be transcended and be sublimated, and we talk about non-duality. So in the spirit of non-duality, I think that we need to embrace these two terms. In the West, it's all about innovation. In India, we think, it's all about frugality, but what we create a third kind of pathway where we can combine these two elements. So let me begin by tracing the kind of the origins, and I want to kind of make this session interactive. So I'm going to first spend the first half giving you the kind of background, the kind of conceptual framework on what is true innovation, and I'll pause and invite you questions. And then the second part, I want to talk about how this concept can be used by you, next generation leaders, to fundamentally reinvent the whole economy and our society as well. Tracing the kind of origins of this concept of frugal innovation, which in a way connects with my own background. I grew up in Pondicherry in South India, very dry climate, water was ration. Me and my brothers would wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning to fill these buckets with water so we can clean and cook. And twice a week, we had the luxury of taking what we call a one-bucket shower. So I experienced early on the scarcity of resources like water and the importance of using wisely these scarce resources. I also learned something else, is that this is a country where we don't waste anything. Even though I attended a French high school, I was lucky to live near this near my house was this old man who used to resell for a few rupees old magazines, Time, Newsweek, and old English magazines. So I was lucky to rent them and devour them and have a leg up in my English kind of mastery over my French-speaking fellow students. And so I learned firsthand that nothing gets lost in India. Everything gets reused and recycled, including knowledge, which is very powerful, and we'll talk about that later as well. After experiencing this immense scarcity for 18 years, I decided to leave the land of scarcity, explore what is abundance. So I went to study in France for 8 years, and before settling in America in 1998. And I live now in Silicon Valley for about 12 years now, where we celebrate innovation. We think innovation is super cool, as evidenced by the spacecraft Maven that, for example, NASA sent with entered Mars orbit in 2015. This is an incredible, amazing, scientific innovation, right? And yet, it's quite expensive. It cost $700 million of taxpayers' money, people like myself, to send this baby into, Mars orbit. And this explains why, since World War II, there has been like an arms race between developed nations, America and Western European powers, who have tried to outspend each other in R&D, research and development, with the belief that more R&D leads to more innovation. And to the point where in 2015 alone, the world's largest companies spent a whopping $700 billion in R&D. But there's something wrong with this picture. What's wrong with this picture is that there's more and more research shows that simply because you spend more in R&D doesn't systematically make a company more innovative. In other words, money doesn't buy innovation, and yet we keep pumping a lot of billions of dollars in R&D, hoping to come up with some, useful solutions. Unfortunately, in Silicon Valley, we don't produce useful stuff. We produce useless stuff, like this $400 juicer, which is supposedly Wi-Fi enabled. It justifies a hefty price tag, and it turns out that this juicer is no more effective than what I use every morning, which is a manual juicer that costs only $1. And this is the kind of aberration that led Sam Pitroda to note that the world's best brains are busy solving the problems of the rich who really don't have problems. And we do have severe problems. There are 17 of them, as you know, defined by the United Nations. These are known as the Sustainable Development Goals, or SDGs, which really look at how do we provide access to clean water, clean electricity, decent quality education, gender equality to the billions of people around the world who are deprived of it. So me and my co-authors, after experiencing abundance in the West for half our lives, we decided to go back to our roots and reconnect with the scarcity that we experienced in our childhood, and more importantly, understand how innovators in the developing world go about innovating with very limited resources. We really tried to find out, is it possible to innovate better with less? And we did find some answers. And the answer doesn't lie in some kind of method or formula. but in a unique mindset that entrepreneurs have in developing book. And the mindset is can be described as following. In Silicon Valley, an engineer comes to work Monday morning asking himself or herself the question, what if I can develop a fridge that can talk to my smartphone? Makes sense. If I run out of milk, a fridge can communicate by SMS to my smartphone, and then on the way back home, I can get a liter of milk. Right? So it's diverse applications. But this is what I call a small what if question, because someone in India asked himself a big what if question, which is, what if I can create a fridge that operates without electricity? This is a big what if question because there are 300 million people in this country who still are not connected to electric grid. And this question wasn't asked by someone who has a PhD in science, but by Mansur Prajapati. He didn't even finish high school. He's a porter by training, and he's developed this world's greenest fridge made entirely of clay called Viticool, and essentially uses the principle of evaporation to absorb the heat in the desert, for example, and then retains the humidity in the inner chambers, thus preserving fruits and vegetables fresh for 5 days and milk fresh for a couple of days. And so what we notice is that when you put a limitation on resources like electricity, you remove the limitation on creativity. In other words, instead of being a limitation, a constraint actually becomes a spur for creativity and innovation. And we see this unique ability to do more with less in other emerging markets, such as Peru, a country that has a 90% humidity rate and receives only 1 inch of rainfall every year. And here, an engineering college in the capital Lima developed this giant advertising billboard that absorbs the humidity in the air, condenses it, purifies it, and generates 90 liters of drinkable water every day. Literally out of thin air, they can create water. And interestingly, there are some startups now in Israel that are trying to scale up this technology, and some of them actually are setting up shop, I believe, in Frugal Innovation. So this is the kind of technology that India will need as we face, serious scarcity, but we have an abundance of humidity. And this is kind of one of the key messages, is that you use what is abundant, humidity, to create what is scarce, which is water. Okay? And you also see that in healthcare, in countries like China. China is actually aging very, very fast. It will be home to 500 million elderly citizens by 2050. So they can, quickly build hospitals and train doctors in villages. So if the doctor cannot go to the patient, the patient cannot go to the doctor has to find a way to come to the patient. So here they developed this very interesting, simple to use medical device that can be operated by nurses or community workers, and it collects the vital signs of elderly citizens, sends the data to a cloud computing system, which analyzes it, offers a preliminary diagnosis, and then if something is severe, the doctor can, from a remote city, analyze the data and offer a personalized treatment plan that is then implemented by the local community. So this is a nice way for China to scale up the healthcare system by building giant health cities or health campuses as we do in India, but to scale out. That is, try to deliver much more targeted, more personalized health solutions. So we'll come back to the notion of scaling out, which is the decentralized delivery of goods and services, as opposed to mass producing and mass distributing goods and services. And of course, when I present these examples in the West, they tell me that that's all nice that you can deliver affordable healthcare to billions and millions, but we in the West can send man to the moon. Can you do that on a shoestring? We have achieved that feat in India. As you know, we sent Italian to Mars in 2015, and this spacecraft was developed for a cost of only $74 million, which is 1/10 of the cost of NASA's project. So the entire budget of ISRO is what NASA spends a single day. The annual budget of ISRO is what NASA spends a single day. So when you have so many limited resources, you have to be creative, right? And learn to do more and better with less. And so when you look at all these examples, our idea was to figure out, is there a kind of underlying operating principle or guiding principle or a philosophy, if you like, that underlies these examples. And what we discovered as this kind of key core tenet of these entrepreneurs is the following, that they're able to use abundance to overcome scarcity. Now, that sounds like a contradiction, right? If somebody is facing scarcity, how can you feel abundance? Let me use this metaphor of a glass to explain. The glass is half empty, and entrepreneurs realize that the tangible resources like water, energy capital are scarce. But when the external resources are scarce, they go within. And within they find an abundance of intangible resources, human qualities like ingenuity, empathy, resilience. And as a community, they also have access to traditional knowledge. That's also something that we have in abundance in a 7,000+ history that India is as a civilization. We have amazing knowledge, right? Like Ayurveda, 5,000 years old, which is far more effective than Western medicine. So instead of saying we don't have money to set up a pharmaceutical industry in this country, or set up big giant hospitals, maybe we should go back to what we already have, ancestral knowledge of preventing diseases in the first place, right? And similarly, think about biodiversity. The rich biodiversity we have that will allow us to overcome many issues we are facing, like food security or health issues, leveraging plant-based medicine or ancestral crops that actually are more nutritious than what they eat today. So, and if you take this logic to the innovation space, it gets also quite interesting. Because you might also say, wait a second, instead of like in Silicon Valley, coming up from iPhone 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 10, in very progress in Western viewpoint is always sequential and linear. So the arrow of time is 1 minute. But in India, the time is circular. So we always think not of jumping from iPhone 7, 8, 9, 10, but we are willing to go back to iPhone 0, 1, to see what wisdom was there and use that to build iPhone 11. That is unique to India. Okay? Use the logic and say, so instead of creating new technologies, how do we leverage the last, instead of developing the next big thing, can we use the last big thing to create new applications? And the one continent that is really teaching us how to do that is Africa. Because it's a continent of extremes. On the one hand, 80% Africans don't have a bank account. 80% Africans don't have access to reliable electricity. But 80% Africans have a mobile phone. So they're using the abundance of mobile connectivity to overcome the scarcity of basic services like banking and electricity. For example, called the M-Pesa. This is used by half the population in Kenya to send and receive money without having a bank account. Simply, essentially, they use electronic money transfer, but without having a bank account, using simply another mechanism, virtual banking kind of system. And today, half the population uses it, and half the country's GDP is transacted through the system. Okay? And of course, once you have electronic money, you can use it, of course, buy frivolous stuff on Flipkart or Amazon, or you can use that kind of money to buy some more basic stuff like electricity. So this is the M-Kopa, also in Kenya, which enables you to use a mobile phone to buy solar electricity, solar energy on a pay-as-you-go basis by making a daily micropayment of a few rupees. As long as you make the payment, micropayments, and you can access free electricity. And when Obama went to Kenya, his father's home country, he made it a point to visit the system because in America where I live, we don't have this kind of solution. I mean, that's vision. With Elon Musk is trying to get with what we call Powerball, which is a system that will allow each household to generate its own electricity. It's going to take many years before we get there. So what it means is that again, Africa is trailblazing We call it leapfrogging. I don't like the term because I think India should stop aspiring to be leapfroggers, a nation of leapfroggers. I think we should become a nation of trailblazers. What I mean by that is, when we talk about leapfrogging, that means that you're running on a racetrack, and then somebody is in front of you, and you're trying to overtake them, to be ahead of them. That's what it means, leapfrog. But it means that it's the same racetrack that the Western world has gone down that path. But if you become a trailblazer, that means you're going to be blazing a whole new track, and you'll be the first to run on it. And that takes a lot more courage and confidence, and that's what Africa is doing, right? They're going straight from no banking to mobile banking. So they're creating new paradigms. Right? They're going straight from candlelight straight to solar light. Not even going to the Western way of electrical grids and stuff like that. So we wrote this book called Frugal Innovation in 2012 to celebrate the kind of ingenuity, the resilience, and the kind of the social compassion of grassroots entrepreneurs in resource-constrained countries like India. And of course, if you ask me, like some of the movie characters that I like to relate to the spirit of Frugal in the 80s, I don't know how many of you know about MacGyver? Okay, clearly I'm getting old. So in the 80s and 90s, he was a very well-known TV character because unlike James Bond, he wasn't wearing expensive suits. He didn't have expensive gadgets. He basically used his Swiss Army knife and any resources he can find wherever he goes to pull himself out of difficult situation. So he basically was very resourceful and ingenious. And of course, more recently, as you know, the Three Idiots movie actually is a very good example of what Amir Khan embodies. This very kind of jugadu, even though he's not well appreciated, in the formal educational kind of system, he actually demonstrates, right, this kind of amazing creativity that doesn't fit into a formal kind of education structure. And then being from South India, I don't know if you know this movie. How many of you know about a movie called Kanu Variam? Very nice. Two people, very nice. This must be compulsory in all schools, my opinion. It's a fantastic movie of very quickly villager who basically didn't go to high school, didn't finish college, high school itself, but he basically has a social compassion. So he basically using kind of Jugadu techniques, he self-assembled himself wind turbine because his village is suffering from severe power cuts. And his father is a father, and without electricity, he cannot use his water pump. He suffers. And he decides that, instead of complaining to the electricity board, which he does, but nothing happens, as you know, and they decide to take, things in his matter into his own hand, and he builds this, wind turbine. And the whole movie is about the tenacity and the perseverance and the kind of self-belief of this young person, who, despite all the adversity, his mother basically thinks he's stupid, his villagers, make fun of him, despite all the obstacles, he basically sticks to his, is faithful to his mission and completes it, at the end. So these are the examples I wanted to share with you about, the characters that embody the spirit of, the can-do, kind of spirit. I want to kind of, before opening up the questions, I want to kind of introduce now the formal aspects of frugal innovation that I talked about. So essentially, around the world, this concept of frugal innovation is now being associated with what here in India we call Jugaad. And of course, Jugaad is more than frugality. It's about also, as I said, ingenuity, resilience. But I think the idea of frugality is now becoming much better understood in the Western community. So I felt it's important that, as in coming years, you start hearing about this concept of innovation. I want you to be ahead of the curve in terms of understanding and practicing it in a more wiser way. So I want to start with the definition of frugal innovation in a more basic, fundamental way. So the way it is now being understood is frugal innovation is about doing more with less. That is essentially, is there a way to create more value using fewer resources? And this is important because you have resource constraints, and is there a way to extract more value from limited resources? And there have been some companies that have done amazing job of, operating on this principle of doing more with less. And one company is Renault Nissan, which is a car company. And this is Carlos Ghosn, the CEO of Renault. And Renault Nissan is a joint venture between the French car company Renault and the Japanese car company Nissan. And Ghosn actually in 2005-06, he was coming regularly to India, and he was very impressed by the Indian engineers' ability to solve technical problems faster, better, and cheaper than French engineers. And impressed by their prowess, he coined the term frugal engineering in 2006. And so he's the one who coined the term, which later evolved to be known as frugal innovation. And not only he came up with that idea of frugal engineering, they practiced it actively. And in 2005, they produced this 6,000 car called the Logan at the time, which was initially destined for poor countries, developing world. And to the surprise, this became a big hit in Western Europe. And then they decided to create a whole new product line that we call entry-level products, as opposed to premium products, for the kind of cost-conscious consumers. And today, these entry-level products account for nearly 40% of the total revenues of the company. Right? It has become almost like their cash cow. And they didn't stop there. Then they dispatched the chief engineer of this project, Gerald Toubé, to actually go live in Chennai, so he can actually have empathy for the drivers in Indian roads, who have to deal with these traffic jams and have to dodge a lot of potholes, right, on the roads here. And the idea was to use this kind of empathy and design thinking, we call it, not just a car, single car, but actually a whole new car platform, completely designed from scratch out of Chennai R&D lab. And out of this fundamental kind of a car architecture, the first car they came up with was the Quid, which I think was launched for a price tag of $6,000. So this was the first kind of vehicle that came out of that platform. And then they realized that, okay, this is an interesting car, of course, but still it uses, petrol, right? Can we use now the same platform to create a car which is more sustainable? So they sent this gentleman, Gerald Toubé, to develop this, to go live in China. And next year they're going to launch an $8,000 electric vehicle out of the same platform. So this is frugal, right? Because you basically develop once the platform, and then essentially, you kind of recombine the components and come up, with the different models. So this is how we started this idea of frugal innovation, to say it is possible to innovate, more effectively with fewer resources. But then I would argue that we need to go now beyond this notion of this cliche of do better with less. We need to think about how do we do more with less. We need to think about how do we do better with less. In other words, how do we create more values? Because we have a moral obligation, right, to create not only economic value, but also simultaneously economic and social, and I would argue more and more ecological value. And that's why I put environmental up in the nominator, not the denominator. That means instead of just reducing our carbon footprint, can we consciously create what we call enlarge our ecological handprint? And there are some examples I'll come back later, which is instead of polluting less, can I build, let's say, an energy positive building so that not only I pollute less, but actually create positive economic ecological value, like free solar electricity for the, if I'm a factory owner, can I build a factory that delivers free electricity using solar energy to the households around the factory? And of course, we also have to learn to minimize resources. And of course, for developing a nation like India, financial resources, really we don't have the same amount of money like the West. And we keep hearing things like, we need, lakhs of crores to deal with climate change or whatever. But that is a very bad way of thinking about it because we keep hiding behind the fact that we don't have enough money to solve pressing social issues. So we need to figure out a way to do more with fewer, less capital. Natural resources like water is something that we have to learn to save. And time. Time because there's urgency, right, to address major issues that we're facing, whether it's the climate change or the explosion of chronic diseases in countries like India and China. So these are the resources that have to be minimized. But the goal is not just to save resources. It's actually, as I said, right, more about creating more value in the system. Now, this sounds very simple formula, but where it gets very exciting is when you start introducing an order of magnitude. What if you're an entrepreneur or a business leader who can come up with a solution that delivers 10 times more value using 10 times the resource? Right. Start getting interested, right? Now, let's go one step further. What if you can create a solution that delivers 100x more value using 100x fewer resources? Then we are talking about a breakthrough, disruptive, kind of solution. Let me give you an example of such, hyper-frugal kind of solution. Today, there are millions of babies that are born premature babies around the world. And when they're born in the Western world, we put them in an incubator, designed in plexiglass. Seen it? And this incubator costs $20,000, and it requires electricity to operate. Which in a country like India, you can imagine $20,000 is a lot of money, and you don't have reliable electricity. So looking at this problem, James Shen, who was a Stanford graduate, and 4 other classmates came up with this very ingenious solution, which is called Embrace. So I actually brought it here. So it looks like this. So this is actually designed like a mini sleeping bag. And inside you actually have this wax-like material. And you just place it on a heating pad. It melts. And then you reinsert that inside. And it basically helps keep the baby at a constant temperature for 6 hours straight. And this solution costs only $200. 1% of the cost of the incubators. And more importantly, it doesn't require electricity, of course. And more importantly, it actually enables, remember, more value, as I said. It's also about, emotional value. Because when this is called kangaroo care, when the mother can hold the baby, have the physical contact with the baby, it has been demonstrated scientifically that the baby not only physically survives, which is possible with the incubator, but actually reduces the negative, psychological effects that they have later on, like, cognitive capability. So the emotional well-being of the baby is actually, improved through a simple physical contact, mother and child. And with a simple solution that saved the lives of 300,000 babies, and they are on track to save the lives of 1 million babies. And let me show you the first customer they had, which is a very moving story, because this is a young mother who actually lost, I believe, 3 of her kids prematurely. And thanks to this device, she was able to save 4 kids. And you can see the immense joy in her face, but also the baby's face, and the parents as well as the grandparents. So this for me is what excites me about Frugal Innovation, is that it's not only about creating more value, but also saving more lives, right? And but it's more about saving lives. What if you can make people more alive, right? How can you bring more aliveness in people's lives, more joy in people's lives? And if you can do that by a factor of 1,000 times, that means that something that is 1,000 times cheaper than solutions, and yet delivers, immensely more value. That would be like, even more impressive, right? Let me give you an example of that. So today there are hundreds of thousands of kids worldwide who actually are either born without the hands, limbs, or they lose them after an accident. And if you want to equip them with a prosthesis, it costs $35,000. And to fix this kind of high cost, which is very expensive to imagine, even for middle-class people, this is an NGO called Enabling the Future. What they do is they design the prosthesis in a way that the design files are made open source. And they are open source, that means that anyone can access the internet. And if you are the parents of such a kid or family members, you can download the files and then use a 3D printer to locally print in your home the different parts and components. And then like a Lego block, you can just snap them together, assemble them, and you end up having, a low cost, prosthesis, which costs only $35, 1,000 pounds. And this has brought immense joy in the lives of Maxence, who is with the 3D printed hand, and this young Indonesian mother who was able to feed a newborn baby for the first time with no hand. And so if you really ask me what is Frugal Innovation, I would say it's really about maximizing joy while minimizing suffering. And I think this is a kind of the real philosophy behind Frugal Innovation. So at this point, I want to pause and invite some questions. At the end of the day, I want to make sure that we have some engaging conversation before we transition to the second part of the presentation, which is about how do we use Frugal Innovation to reinvent fundamentally the economy and society. Any questions? Anything that I can help clarify? And any
use the microphone.
Yes. I have a mic here. So yes.
My name is Rushikesh. I have a question that you always say that necessity is the mother of invention. Wherein there are adversity, examples we saw the bridge, it was built out of adversity of that made the thinker innovator to think in that manner. So my thinking is that always the adverse situations lead to this kind of innovations. So, but how can we develop a mindset wherein we don't have to go in the adverse situations? We can prevent those situations. By default, we can develop those kind of thinking in the labs.
Sure. It's a very, very good question. How do we come to a situation where we minimize adversity in a way? So I have two ways to answer that. One way to answer that would be more from a I guess Indian/spiritual perspective, which is that adversity you can control. So instead of trying to use your life energy to minimize adversity, because these are things that every morning I wake up, my first prayer is to Ganesha. I say, look, there are many things I can control. So I surrender to you so that you take care of things that I can control. But give me an intimation of the things that I am supposed to do. And tell me why I have to do, how I have to do, what I have to do. So because he is a Vimeshwara, is a remover of obstacles. But I don't know which obstacles will come my way. Right? So therefore, I would rather surrender to him and have him deal with that, that adversity. So I'm saying that because that's the point, is that you don't know what's going to hit you. But if you are actually, rooted in yourself and you can tap into the inner resources, you can actually improvise a solution, right, to deal with adversity. Because you can always plan ahead. And my old point is that what I learned in India in the past 7 years is that when I used to come in India, nothing goes according to plan. Look at this. I was so convinced. I was able to come at 4:15, have a nice masala chai, relax a bit. It was a long 2-week trip. And then, have a relaxed conversation with you. Nothing goes according to plan. Right? So instead of thinking I have a plan A, and I'm gonna try to come up with a plan B, right? And then I ended up what I ended up doing is I ended up playing what I call alphabet soup. Plan A, B, C, D, all the way to Z. That's one approach. Deal with adversity. Or you have the confidence and faith that you can improvise a plan. So instead of having confidence in plan A, it's better to have the confidence to come up with a plan, depending on the situation. So that is, more a philosophical, spiritual way of answering that question. But having said that, the question is a very profound one, which is that how do we get people to kind of in a more kind of instinctive way to think about doing it frugally? I think this was only possible if you're sitting in Silicon Valley. It's very impossible to develop this, right? Because you look around and say, average GDP capita is the highest in Silicon Valley, right? So the average, income there is like $200,000, right? $200,000, $20,000 is, 10%, right? If it's talking about people's lives, you're like, of course, you would easily, spend $20,000, in a solution like this. Sorry, an incubator like, that we're talking about, right? But when you come to India and you go into the villages and realize that people earn $1 a day, then suddenly you realize like $20,000, my God, that's like, the entire, more than entire, lives, savings and revenue, right? So what I'm getting at is that you can be frugal simply using your money. And we'll come back to that later. You need to have a business mind and a social heart. So essentially in Silicon Valley, it's all about business. And forget about the spirit, we'll talk about that later. It's fine, let's start with mind and heart first, and the spirit will come later. Essentially what I'm getting at is that you have to start from here. Because when you go understand the kind of the constraints and the needs and the context within which the customer operates, then you know that logically you have to come up with a solution that is 10, 100x better and cheaper, etc. But that's impossible to do if you kind of intellectually try to address this problem. This is something that has to come, from heart. And so that's what I was saying that, for engineers particularly, there is a kind of tendency today in the West right now to basically approach Frugal Innovation concept. And if you Google it, you can find out in Germany, UK, France, and it's now really taking off. Purely from the efficiency standpoint, which is, can I use my brain power, my intellect, rational thinking, to basically create something that is cheaper, without really, spending time, with what are the actual needs of the customer, what are the constraints, what kind of difficulties they are facing, and then use that as input to kindle your compassion, your empathy, and then use that to create a sense of purpose, which then will sustain your innovation project. Because let's say that you develop as an engineer something, this is 10 times cheaper. You launch the product, it fails, you get depressed because your ego is attached to it. But if your heart energy goes into it, and this becomes your life purpose, then it failed 50 times before they got this. 50 failures over a 5-year period. Right? And they're using their own personal savings to bootstrap this company, right? To have that kind of perseverance, you can't just rely on, brain power, right? You need to connect with your heart power. And so that's one way, another way I would answer that question. Other questions or clarification you might have? Yes, please. Is it? Yes.
So, my name is Varun Banonsal, and my question to you is, if we talk about cost optimization, China has successfully done that in various products in PC. But today, the thing is their reliability is questioned whenever we talk about the Chinese product. So, how can we make Indian products in such a way that their cost are optimized, but at the same time they are reliable?
Yes. Thank you. So the question was about the link between frugality as a certain bad reputation, right? We think always like something cheap or potentially even shoddy kind of thing. So if you look at these kind of solutions, they are actually FDA certified, ISO certified. So because you have a cardinal rule, right? I shall not harm the patient, right? So the solution cannot harm the patient. So that is, the prime directive. So when you design a frugal solution, you need to make sure that you don't hurt the consumer. So safety, security has to be fundamental. The car that Renault designed, actually what they did is, this is a beauty. They brought in the Western French standards of quality quite high, combined that with the frugal engineering of Indians. So what they did essentially is to create an equation with 4 variables. So a frugal solution is to have 4 tangible criteria and a 5th one which is intangible. The 4 are, it has to be affordability, it has to be simple to use, because one of the purpose things, the woman in the village, she may be, she may not, she may be illiterate, right? So the solution has to be simple to use and to maintain. You can wash it easily, for example. And inside there's a gate that says too hot, okay, too cold. And just a green, yellow, that's it, print. So something easy to use, simple to use, simplicity, the second criteria. Third criteria is sustainability. The solution has to be, that's why I say social heart, business model. You have to make sure that there's a business model that makes it viable. Because imagine develop a solution and the startup goes belly up, you are going to actually Indian to a lot of customers, right, who actually invest in your solution. And then comes quality. Now quality has, I would say this quality has two dimensions, which is safety, security. I shall not harm the patient, fine. I think that has become fundamental in India, right? Fine. But there's another one which is subjective. See, that's objective, right? You can measure it, standardize, fine. Quality, standards, everything. But then there's another one in India which is becoming now more important, because even poor people, I said it out, low earners, but the high earners, they have great aspirations. So the other quality dimension is you have to make the product aesthetically pleasant, something which is aspirational. That's why the Shula, the stuff, for example, there's a lot of innovation now in how do you make the stuff, cooking stuff, more aspirational. It may be fuel efficient, but it's not enough, right? So because somebody wants to feel proud having it, right? So this is where the design comes in. So you have to integrate design with engineering. And this is where I think that India being, as we are very known, look at how beautiful the logo is, right? They have incredible aesthetics. Now, I was in this company, I'll tell you this, to answer the China question. So four criteria: affordability, simplicity, sustainability, and quality. And then there's a fifth one, which is intangible, which is purpose. If you want to attract employees and future leaders, come work for you. It won't be enough that you say, oh, we're developing these products, that are affordable, simple, sustainable, and high quality. It serves a purpose. This is where India can shine, because we can come up with these products that actually embody these five attributes. And I've seen some amazing stuff in Mumbai. It's a company called Imaginarium, best kept secret of India. They are India's largest 3D printing house. And they are pioneering something else. I mean, this is not related to frugality, which is that while China is known for high volume, low variety, mass production, they are pioneering low volume, high variety. So essentially, you can 3D print a custom device just for you, like medical device. Or, I may not know this, but actually almost 50% of the jewelry today is not handmade. Design the jewelry, and then it's 3D printed. Most of the material. And you might think like, unlike China, big factories like Foxconn, the entire factory is, I guess, twice the size. And they're able to integrate man and machine. So literally there are left and right side of this factory. There are 200 human beings who actually focus on the polishing and the design aspect this side, and then highly automated 3D printers this side. So India also shows that no, we don't have to completely automate everything. We can come up with a hybrid model where man and machine, can coexist. So I think there are some very interesting things that India can do in manufacturing. We'll come back to that, which is not big factories. I mean, for me, instead of make in India, we'll talk about that. We need to have this concept of makers in India. We need to create more, small scale, micro factories where actually employ, more craftsmen, things like that. And combine that with some kind of, not automation, but things like 3D printers, because you cannot do that kind of fine jewelry in hands. It comes a point where you need that kind of technology, and that's where I think India can be, more successful. Any other? Yes. Would you mind using the mic so that others can listen as well? Thank you.
I'm Mohan Krishna. So the problem in India is like, the problem is not invention. Even as you said, like a friend of yours did an invention, there are multiple inventions that are happening in the person. Problem is identifying that person who's doing it. It doesn't come out of that place, first of all. So he has to be identified, recognized, and that model or that whatever the product has to be identified. The problem is that. Is there anything for us to do? if I'm not wrong, for each of the biggest innovations in London, there was already been a prototype that was made, which should be from a village or a person who does not know coding. So it has taken a long way for it to come to that level, which was already a prototype to a person who do not even know what is that. So what do?
Sure. It's a great question. So India actually, a lot of the, first thing we celebrated the grassroots innovators, right? So because the oldest thing, village people are actually like, poor, and more importantly, like, they are not educated, they are not creative, but actually we know that, it's not true. And there have been initiatives like the Honeybee Network with Anil Gupta from IIM Ahmedabad, who has actually been documented. They have documented 50,000. You can go to the National Innovation Foundation, NIF, Google that. And you can actually see the catalog of all these, innovations. And once a year they give an award. Like once a Prajapati was actually spotted by them, and they help patent, so that field has been patented as well. So they help them with intellectual property management. And then the President of India actually gives them an award every year as well. So there's already a mechanism to actually showcase them and really celebrate them and catalog their solutions. But then the problem comes is like, how do you help them kind of scale up the solutions? And here I think that my personal take is that there's something called open innovation. You might have heard about this concept, which enables corporations to link up with startups or academia, so that startups, academia may have interesting ideas or technologies, and the corporation has the wherewithal to take that and build applications around it and scale them up. So in the same vein that my dream is that what if Indian companies, private sector, it could also be like the public sector, if you figure out a way to connect with the grassroots innovators and figure out a way to bring these innovations to the marketplace, right? And here there's been some efforts because our future group, as you know, Shobiani, has actually teamed up with the National Innovation Foundation to use their stores as a way to showcase some of the solutions coming from the grassroots innovators. So the retailers have an important role as to be the kind of the front end for showcasing these solutions coming from grassroots. The second thing that I think we should do is you should understand that the grassroots innovators, when they come up with a solution, they don't, unlike Silicon Valley, they don't say, I'm going to develop a great hammer and then go looking for a nail. Because in that case, the nail is planted in the food. So the solution they try to come up with is something that is so painful, they just want to remove the nail at whatever cost. Right? So when the initial solution they come up with may be kind of crude. So we need to also figure out a way, how do you bring the skills like design, marketing, sales, distribution skills to these people who actually have the raw creativity, as you rightly said. They're inventors, but they need certain skill set. And this is where I think that I don't want to be polemic, but I think there are three things that have come together we'll discuss. Today in India, there are three national projects. We have a skilling project. We have the Digital India concept, and then we have the Startup India. I think they have to come together. So because we can do digital skilling for the villagers to teach them certain courses, and then they can become entrepreneurs. Right? So but these three pillars are separate. And we'll talk about that later because the things like maker spaces, you can introduce them to 3D printing. So that why is 3D printing important? Because 3D printing has an amazing advantage. I call this time to market, but I call 3D printing time to credibility. In other words, when you present an idea, right, to an investor, you present a PowerPoint slide. They can't see the product. But if you present a prototype, right, that uses 3D printer, the chances of, research shows is true, the chances of being accepted your idea goes up dramatically. Because you want visual, right? You have to see the bloody, what is the solution, right? An elevator pitch doesn't work. You just show the thing, trust me, that's often enough, right? So that's what I mean by time to credibility. You have to find a way to reduce that. And if these people can have access to these, simple tools, but they can quickly prototype, come with a better looking kind of solution and say, look, it can be like this, but I need more resources, to actually productize it. And these are the things that technology like 3D printers can help. And right now, these maker spaces equipped with these simple to use tools like 3D printers. They're coming up in cities, Delhi as one, Mumbai, Bengaluru, etc. But my dream is to take these to the villages. And I don't know if the Ministry of Rural Development can do that, or somebody or some public agency has to subsidize these things. And more importantly, it's not just enough to put that thing there. We need instructors. And so my dream is that maybe there is like a Peace Corps. There is some kind of innovation corps where young engineers can actually go spend time into the villages, because the makerspace will be developed. But somebody has to teach these people, how to use the 3D printers, how to maintain them, etc. And this is where I think that young people can be instructors, and there may be some kind of reverse mentoring. Young engineering students can teach people in the 30s, 40s, the villages. All right, so I want to get going because probably you have a lot of things. I feel guilty already that it's end of the day. So and then we'll come back to the Q&A portion, because you may have more insights into some of the questions maybe I'll address next, which is essentially what I think is happening is that we have in India a golden opportunity. Is still developing to completely come up with a new economic development pattern. And here I think that Frugal Innovation can take important role. And beyond the economy, I think we can also fundamentally redesign our society as well using the Frugal principles. And this is beginning to happen surprisingly. I don't see it yet in India, but interestingly, there's a big change happening in the West right now. Not much in America, but in Western Europe, definitely. So this is what we documented in our last book, Frugal Innovation, is a new sense of frugality which is developing in the Western world, which has seen a lot of abundance and waste for many decades. And this is starting with the fact that more people now in the Western world are becoming aware of growing social inequality. And in India, of course, this is well known, but even in Western Europe, there are 16% of the population, 50 million people, who live below the poverty line. So they are economically precarious. They can't have access to some of the basic services, healthcare, electricity, education that we take for granted, or banking services. And secondly, more people are becoming aware of ecological degradation and resource scarcity, especially thanks to a lot of awareness building campaigns like the Earth Overshoot. And this is basically it's a date in the year on which you, as humans, humanity has consumed more than the resources that Earth can provide. And this date was in December in the 70s, and now it's almost in July. Let me explain what it means. It means that if you are receiving a paycheck, monthly paycheck, it's as if by the 17th of the month, you've used up all the money. And then you're living on debt the last 30 days. And then eventually your creditor, which is Mother Earth, comes back knocking on the door and says, pay back now, in the form of all the kind of calamities we had, tornadoes, hurricanes, tsunami, right? It's a way of saying, you have overused what I gave you, and you're taxing me too much in terms of, having people do something more. So this is actually leading us to a fundamental shift in the values, I would say, of consumers. Particularly, as I said, in Western Europe, we see that, where more and more people actually are preferring, for example, to buy store brands, private labels. They're not attached to label of brands. They don't feel like brands give them any kind of status symbol anymore. There's a growing number of people who choose to live with less. This was the Gandhian ideal in a way that we call minimalism or voluntary simplicity. They're saying, look, I can afford to have more stuff, but I'm going to try to downshift. I'm going to try to live a simple life. I myself don't have a car. I probably never have a car, own a car in my life. I have a bicycle, and that's my lifestyle. But and so this is a conscious choice to say I can afford to have a car, but I choose not to have a car. Right? To try to kind of reduce what you have in life, simplify the lifestyle. And more importantly, a lot of young people now expect brands to be, as you know, more socially, environmentally responsible as well. And this is particularly pronounced among your generation, the millennials, who value quality of life over quantity in life. For example, the fact that many of you prefer to share cars versus owning them. Let me ask you, how many of you do ride sharing, carpooling? See, amazing. Thank you, thank you. Plan earlier, thank you for that. So clearly, this is a growing trend, as you know. My generation felt that having a car was a status symbol, and we benchmark ourselves against our neighbor. If he or she has a bigger car, then we need to outspend her to get a much bigger car, right? So the relationship between us and the products is changing dramatically. You are looking for convenience and utilitarian value of these products, and using it as a way to build your character. And then you also want to become entrepreneurs. You want to be your own boss. You're not interested in working for someone else. I myself, like 35 after a master's degree, became self-employed. I was 47 today, I'm still self-employed because I want to be in charge of my own life. But for you, this will be a default one. So your generation will have, I think, 5 to 6 career paths. Right? Not jobs, career paths. So you may fluidly go from working, as an NGO, then go into, public service, then decide to work in the private sector. So you'll be much more, fluid in your career choices, right? So all this leads to this observation that I really believe that we are seeing the rise of what I'm studying in my next book, which is the rise of a conscious kind of generation. And many of you in the room, actually, that's why I wanted to kind of end my trip here at Soil, because you, I think, kind of represent this first generation of conscious leaders. And of course, in the West, when we say conscious, they have a very narrow interpretation of consciousness. Conscious means that you're awake, as opposed to being asleep or in coma. But of course, as you know, in Indian tradition, we have a more sophisticated understanding of consciousness. The whole science of consciousness, built with chakras, for example, right, which are the energy centers located on the body. And as you know very well, there are 7 of them. The first 3 are the more kind of challenging ones for us because they have to do with fear, sense of survival. Then comes desire, sexual desire first, procreation, and desire for more. And then eventually having more isn't enough. You want to have it all. This is the need for power, control, and domination. And as long as you live a lifestyle driven primarily from these energies, fear, desire, power, you will live a kind of lifestyle I like to call in having mode. Because your identity, your sense of character is entirely based on what you have. And because you have a sense of scarcity, something is missing within you, something is lacking, you always will try to fill that vacuum by going outside to find something to fill. That's why you have to kind of go acquire more and more things to fill the vacuum inside you. And you also tend to be much more self-centered. As Dalai Lama says, the people who use the words I, me, mine in the sentences are more prone to heart attacks than people who use, we, us, ours. And scientifically that's been proven. So how the shift happens from I to we is when we unlock the heart chakra, which is, the anahata, where you have access to compassion, which is really the passion to reduce the suffering of others. Now, in the West, these days we talk a lot about emotional intelligence. We talk about EQ in contrast with IQ. But in Indian tradition, EQ is just a stepping stone to have access to much greater capabilities. Like, for example, the throat chakra, the Vishuddhi, where you have access to intuitive, authentic self. And this is important because all of us, we are born with a unique song that we are uniquely qualified to sing. Unfortunately, most of us will die without ever discovering that song. So that unique song that you are supposed to sing actually is discovered here. This is the authentic self. This is where you discover your true gifts in the world. But of course, you can use these talents for selfish purpose, or you can actually connect with the sixth chakra, where you find a sense of purpose. This is where the intuition, which, by the way, I found this beautiful definition of intuition. Intuition is intelligence. They're committed, they got to speak it. Because something that is, much faster than intellect. And this is what gives you a sense of confidence that you can sense what the life purpose is, and you can actually connect with it, as opposed to like letting a monkey mind tell you like what to do with your life. And when you have that sense of surrender, you can use the intuition, you use your talent and your compassion to serve a larger purpose, and then you discover the sense of unity, which is about non-duality and sense of oneness and interconnectedness. Because the whole idea of raising consciousness in the light of what's happening in the world is to go from a world of division to a world of unity, from a world of sense of emptiness to a feeling of fullness, from a sense of restlessness to a sense of stillness. And this is what happens when you move up in the energy spectrum, because you start living a life of being, because that means that you feel the sense of richness inside you. So you don't need anything outside to fill you, right? To make up for what you feel, sense of inadequacy goes away. And then more importantly, you become other-centered. Your focus is on how can I help others, as opposed to helping yourself. Now, why I presented this as a framework is that once you become more conscious, right? So the entire capitalistic society is based on this. Right? Basically, what we call tamas, which is fear, run away from something, or run towards something, desire. And then they use cleverly a sense of, you're empowered, right? You can press one click button, get what you want. Wow, that is powerful. So the entire consumerist model is built on this three chakras. It's only when we go up there, we can start building a more compassionate, more inclusive, more sustainable economy than the whole society. And it can be done. And this is what I invite you to do, is to, as conscious citizens, think about, can we in India build a more frugal economy? Can we use the frugality that we are so ingrained with to actually build a frugal economy that will be resting on three pillars? The first would be sharing, making, and reusing. And so let me kind of elaborate, but what I mean by sharing, making, reusing. So let's start with sharing. As I said, most of you are familiar with car sharing. You heard probably about BlaBlaCar, which is a car sharing platform. They're going by leaps and bounds. There are over 30 million users today. So this is well known, right? Where consumers share cars, rooms, Airbnb, for example, sharing apartments. That's already well known. And the B2C, business to consumer, C2C, consumer to consumer sharing, as a market will be $335 billion by 2025. That's a huge market, as big as the rental market, hotels, traditional, car, etc. But what's going to be more exciting, and that you can find here out of India, is what happens if you start thinking about B2B sharing. That is, what if businesses start sharing assets and resources, right? That would be like, trillions of dollars of new economy, which is no longer based on competition. See, in business school, the first thing they teach is Michael Porter's 5, 6 feet going up, but multiple forces. That's 5 forces, right? Because he added few, as time evolves. So it's always a company strategy. Nobody teaches corporate strategy except that he has started. So what if you think about B2B sharing? So let me just give some examples. So this is Rotash Mal. He actually is here in Gurgaon, I believe. He is the former CEO of Escort, the company that makes the tractors for farmers. And at 60, he decided to become an entrepreneur. He launched the EM3, which is the Uber for farmers. So essentially, a farmer can use his phone and press a button, and somebody will show up in the tractor and says, "I'm here to help you harvest." The idea is, farmers don't have much money, right? So you convert something which is a fixed cost, like equipment, make it a variable cost. And it's not just about having them access to equipment, but they can also have access to knowledge and expertise. So somebody can come and help you and advise what crops to use, how to improve your yield, etc., etc. And so this is happening in the farming sector. But you can also take it to the industrial sector. This is called industrial symbiosis. This is a model where my waste becomes your raw material. So nothing goes to landfill. We share among everything, resources, information, waste among ourselves. So this is happening in Scandinavia. As you know, they are very, very ahead in terms of sustainability. And this is in Denmark. where 10 companies are co-located in the industrial park, and one company's waste is now used as input by another company. So for example, a steel company can take its waste and give it to a cement company to make cement using steel waste. So this is called industry symbiosis. It's a way of sharing assets with someone waste among. Now, my vision is that just get excited a bit. You can start with sharing waste because there's nothing proprietary in that. Then you can start sharing assets, resources to even employees or clients and intellectual property. There's no limit to how far you can go. So this is, I think, where we're heading next to the more cooperation-based economy. Then the second one is, as I said, the making. This means that this is the important one, most exciting one. This is the idea that in the 20th century, the consumers have a motto, which is I consume, therefore I am. I go to IKEA, buy a chair, and feel happy. But the 21st century, the motto is going to be I create, therefore I am. Instead of buying an IKEA chair, I want to make my own chair. That's why it's called making. And this actually is now possible because of the building blocks. There's some new technologies that are becoming more and more affordable, such as this thing called Raspberry Pi. And this is what it looks like. This is actually a computer the size of a credit card, developed at Cambridge University in England. And essentially, it's only $35. It's entirely open source. And with this, you can actually create unbelievable applications. You can develop a school in a box. That's what you see here. And today, there are 5 billion people in the world who can't access the internet. So if the student cannot go to the knowledge has to come to this. So what they do is they take all the Wikipedia content, the Khan Academy, online tutorials, all that is downloaded on this piece of technology. And then this is Wi-Fi enabled. So you can actually drop it in a table here. And then the kids are using the low-cost Akash tablets to access this content offline without going to the internet. And this is the Akanksha school in Pune, where a lot of underprivileged kids come study. And what is amazing is that these kids self-assemble the whole system in 2 hours and start learning in a peer-to-peer fashion. So this is going to be the biggest shift in the education system. It's going to be less and less about vertical transmission of knowledge from teacher to a student. It's going to be more and more lateral peer-to-peer learning. Now that's the first step in the education.
Which is what we started in Symbiosis.
Yeah.
I hope that peer-to-peer is working, and I hope you are helping each other.
So that's going to be revolutionary, right? I mean, because that means that the guru is not up there. We have the guru inside, and we all have a guru inside, right? So that's about how you connect the inner guru to help others as well. And that's about peer-to-peer learning. And the second aspect of learning, which is enabled by this movement, is learn by doing. Because your generation will not just sit there and learn theoretical concepts, right? You want to actually go do something, and then by doing empirically, experientially, you can learn about certain principles, especially in science and technology, right? Which cannot be taught in very abstract kind of dry fashion, like in my tradition. I hated physics because of that. So, or chemistry. Now you can teach physics, chemistry, or mathematics in a much more fun fashion. This is possible, as I said, with the maker spaces. These are community spaces popping up in Mumbai. This is Makers Asylum in Mumbai. There's one in Delhi as well. You can check it out. And these are places equipped with laser cutters, 3D printers, and other kind of tools that we used to find in big factories before. And today they're available in a room no bigger than this. So the idea is that you go there, as I said, with the problem, not even an idea. You say, look, I have a problem. I see that a lot of kids are dying prematurely, and I want to solve that, right? So you enter the space as an expert of problem, as opposed to an expert of solution. That means, you become so passionate about the problem, you say, I really want to solve it. You go there, that's all it is. You just need to have the passion for the problem. And two things happen. First, you have the equipment to help you, go from this vague idea of what you want to do to something which is more concrete, like a prototype. And more importantly, you have people there who can help. Let's say if I want to go make a chair, I'm not a carpenter, but some people there will be, some carpenters, some amateur carpenters will be there who can help you introduce to the basics of making, a chair. So this is how, and this is maybe controversial too, I think Anil will agree with me. I think that in the 20th century, knowledge was power. In the 21st century, ignorance is power. The less you know about a field, the more likely you can create something very disruptive. That's what's happening here. Because you go in with, as a child, knowing nothing about anything. Therefore, you have so much openness to not only receive knowledge, but actually come up with very kind of breakthrough kind of ideas. So this is why I think that the less you know, the better it is these days. And anyhow, this also is aligned with what I keep saying is that you're going from just-in-case learning, where you kind of put a lot of knowledge in your head just in case one day we'll use it, to just-in-time learning. You learn exactly what you need when you need it. This enables that. You can say, look, I need to acquire skills. Okay, go there, learn it. Just when you need it. As opposed to becoming like this kind of, superhuman, right, that knows everything, right? You can actually learn as you go, and also unlearn what you don't want. So, and this actually goes to one step further. By the way, just so you know, this is also being used by professionals, domain experts. So for example, there's architects who come to figure out a new way of coming up with, using new materials to make structures when they make a house or building. Or a doctor who comes here and is developing his own medical device. So, yeah.
I need to go, so I just want to thank because I have to.
Sure. I probably have
want to interrupt your session.
No problem.
Then pick up Mr. Mukuraman.
No problem. Yes,
who is there. I have to take
Sure. No worries.
I just want to thank you very much for this wonderful evening that you spent. Please continue.
I also have a book.
All right, thank you very much. So enjoy the rest of the talk.
So this is getting more interesting now because beyond, as I said, it's frugal engineering, right, at the beginning. There's also something now called frugal science, which is what we can come up with, low-cost scientific tools. Today, if you are a scientist, if you have a lab, the low-end microscope costs $2,000. Low-end. But this guy, Manu Prakash at Stanford, has come up with a 50-cent microscope called Foldscope, designed as a paper origami. You just fold it, and it looks like glasses, Google Glass kind of thing. And I'll show you. And then it amplifies subcellular structures. You can see viruses, bacteria, 2,000 times larger. So the idea is to use it as a low-cost medical diagnostic tool to diagnose, infectious diseases, malaria, TB, things like that. But the next thing they know, they're shipping 1 million units worldwide to classrooms. So kids actually can learn like subject like chemistry in a more hands-on fashion. Okay. Instead of learning the kind of theoretical concepts, they can actually see what the heck that looks like, right? And because that's how when you visually see something, right, and you can play with it, called kinetic intelligence, you learn faster than just receiving some theoretical knowledge. And pushing it even further, the notion of making is the ability to make and produce your own electricity and potentially your own food. And this is happening, as I said, in countries like Germany, where every neighborhood has their own cogeneration plant, generate their own heat, and use solar panels to generate their own electricity. And the excess electricity, they sell it back to the electricity. And by 2050, half the European families will have their own power generation system and become more self-reliant. And this actually goes into because you also learn about business. I thought it was important to know that the businesses are also adapting to the reality, which is, as I said, mass production to a more decentralized approach, right? From scaling up to scaling out. And this is Novartis, drug company. They have developed this microfactory. They take the entire manufacturing of drugs and they compress that into a small unit. And this microfactory can generate drugs 10 times faster using 100 times fewer resources, 100% fewer resources, and reduces carbon emissions by 90%. And it's actually designed in a way that you can put it in a container and ship it to a location which is facing an epidemic outbreak, like Ebola, cholera, or something. So again, if the patient cannot go to the drug has become the patient. This is what the whole philosophy is, right? So we have to make things more accessible without expecting them, arrogantly to come to us as a company. And then the third one is the idea of reusing. As Dr. Mashil Gartner said, this is the only country in the world where we don't get rid of even plastic buckets. Broken plastic buckets. We have used, building, to fix it, right? So everything is preserved in this, country. And of course, in the West, we always like to use a fancy term to designate the kind of common practices in India. And now this big term that is making huge waves in the West is called the circular economy. How many of you heard about the circular economy? Okay, so I think a few hands are raised. So the circular economy is something that if you Google, you will see that economy is very, very popular now, especially in Western Europe, China, and US a bit less. And this is in contrast with the way we run the economy, which is very linear. That is, you extract raw materials from Mother Earth, make an iPhone, use it for 2 years, then get rid of it, upgrade the phone. The problem is that old phone goes into landfill. That's polluting, planet. The new way is that, can you design a product in such a way that at the end of the use of the product, you can recover all the raw materials inside to make a new product. This is called cradle-to-cradle design, as opposed to cradle-to-grave design. Because design in a way that you can reuse it, right? So you force to do that, you get rid of the product. But here, no, you want to make sure that you can reuse the product. Now, this can apply to a lot of things, like, for example, Levi Strauss, the jeans maker. So they make jeans now with the recycled plastic bottles. As you know, in the ocean, there are lot of plastic waste, and they collect the plastic waste. And with these recycled plastic bottles, they can make a pair of jeans. So waste is now equal. So think about how we can use waste to create value. Next time you have filter coffee, don't throw the waste, because with the coffee waste, you can come up with 16 to 20 different applications, like cosmetics, organic fertilizers, or pellets for cooking. Okay. So there are many startups now who are launching companies that find clever ways to use coffee waste to come up with applications. And then you can also think about creating not just the new products out of waste, but create, as I said, remember, more economic and social value. How do you create more social value? Well, in Dharavi, as you know, they're I think some of the world's largest kind of rag pickers. And what they do is they have this project where they train young women into designing and sewing, for example, clothes and other garments or accessories, which are actually designed in a very beautiful way, and it's made up of waste. And then they sell them in premium stores. Now, it actually gives them gainful employment, sense of pride and dignity. This is something that I can create. And these are useful skills as well, right? Again. So think about this as what we call upcycling, as opposed to just recycling. Upcycling means that every time you recycle, it goes up in social value and aesthetic value. Makes it more beautiful. Quality, more beautiful. And the final example is this one, a more radical one. As I said, remember I said more value, I said more environmental value. So it's pretty, we need to pollute less and generate more positive value for the planet. And this is an example of that. There is a revolution in how manufacturing will happen in the future. This is a company called Interface. They make carpets, industry carpets for buildings, hospitals, schools. And they have this concept called factory as a forest. So what they do is they're building these factories that what happens if you go to the forest, you discover that trees are very generous. They share a lot of resources with each other. They don't try to, hold resources. They don't say share things with others. So inspired by the principles of trees in the forest, they have now something called factory of the forest, where this factory will generate 20 ecosystem services. For example, they will have solar panels that will generate free electricity, clean electricity for communities for their operation. They will generate water as a byproduct of the manufacturing process. It can be shared to the community, etc., etc. 20 of them. That means that the factory, which is a symbol of pollution and capitalistic exploitation, as we said, exploitative business, becomes a regenerative business. We have to do this because at the rate at which we are consuming and creating waste, by 2030, we are going to need 3 planets, supply us with resources, and absorb our waste. And we only have half planet left. So unless we become regenerative, especially in a country like India, right, 1.6 billion people soon in the next 20 years, this is not it's going to be a disaster scenario, right? So we have to think India because think about it, 70% of the buildings in India that will exist in 2050 have not been built yet. Almost 80%, 90% of the factories that exist in 2050 are not. In other words, we can create a blueprint for what the factories of tomorrow look like, what the buildings of tomorrow look like. And this blueprint can be, a global one. And this is kind of how I want to end with, is some takeaways for you to mull over this week and the future, which is what can you do, as future leaders, because the School of Leadership will be the inspired leaders in the future. So I want to kind of give you some kind of, tips to kind of mull over. One is be the change. Means, can you actually, as Gandhi said, not live simply so that others can simply live? And we have to do it. And this trip to India made it so clear for me that we all have to figure out a way to live, each in our own way. My way of doing it in California is that I became a locavore. That is somebody who consumes food grown within 15-mile radius of where I live. So I gave up, tropical stuff like banana, mangoes. I don't eat there. Even basmati rice is grown in California. May not have the same taste as here, but I have access to that in California. So basically, I decided to eat, only food from crops grown within California as much as possible. There are ways you can actually, find a way to live, more frugally. Maybe not have a car and rely more on car sharing, for example. Maybe find the kind of clothes that last longer as opposed to going for the fast fashion. Keep changing all the time. So think about how you can live a more frugal lifestyle. The second thing, as I said, think about how can you raise in consciousness, as I said, which is not get stuck into this heavy mode of lifestyle, aspire to become much more connected with your true being. It's not easy, especially the way India is going. There are so much attractions and distractions. The problem with these forces is that law of gravity, right? It always pulls you down. You can't fight it, right? It naturally happens. So it takes more effort to go up. And that's why you have to become more conscious, but also more intentional. You need to have a sankalp, an intention, firm intention to say, I will try to, And by the way, this is not just about you raising your consciousness, but you have to figure out how can you create a field of consciousness where you help others broaden their awareness as well. Whether it be your family members, your friends, it could be your future employees as well as leaders. So I think this is the task that I assign you as future leaders, is not become wealthier and more famous and whatever, but actually become to learn to be more conscious. And with that, I think you can actually build this new economy, as I say, which rests on the 3 pillars of sharing, reusing, and making. And the third thing I would conclude with is that we are in India. I'm a proud Indian, but I'm also French. I'm also American. And for 20 years living in the West, I was always annoyed by the fact that when I presented to the Western people some solution that came from India or elsewhere, they look down on us. They say they don't have anything to learn. And but now the scenario is changing, right? India is emerging, And we can say like, we actually are better than the West or whatever. But that kind of language that, that we talk about first world, third world, I think we have to get rid of that because we are entering an age of convergence where the problems are conversion. And we have what I call no more first world, third world problems, like one world problems that affect all of us. For example, as I said, water. Doesn't matter whether you are poor, rich, you can be in Africa or you can be in California, water is not a problem. Where I live, the water bed is going down pretty quickly. So you're rich, poor, black, white, man, woman, doesn't matter. They're all going to be affected by water. And if you take all the water we have on Earth and you model it as a sphere, this is what it looks like. If you take all the drinkable water we have, this is what it is, a single droplet. And this is what we have to feed 7 million people today. And when we're going to have 10 million people, you realize that, we have to do more with less. Of course, it's a gimmicky thing to do here, graphically, but visually. But the point is to say, right, it's a collective common good. The public is what is common good. Right? It's a commons. Right? Things like water. Something that you have to treat as not like my water versus your water, right? This is a water that we all share. So we have to have a sense of, collective, kind of ownership of these, scarce resources, provide stewardship, manage them, in a very way. Same thing for diseases. You used to talk about rich man diseases, right? Heart disease, diabetes. Now they're being exported to poor countries. India and China are rivaling each other, as you know, to become world's capital for diabetes. So again, we have to come up with solutions to solve these problems. So my kind of invitation to you is that be rooted in your Indianness, but I would say think and act globally. Okay, so let me explain. So of course, there's a lot of discussion today about you're proud about being indigenous, developing indigenous technologies, thinking about domestic needs here, which are huge. So it is very tempting, right, to say, I'm going to look at what are the local needs, come up with local solutions, and market them. But as I said, there are more and more problems that are becoming global. So I think we have to figure out, you have to figure out, right, and how can I, while being rooted in my Indianness, confidently engage people in the West so that they will sell interesting ideas for technology or capital. And we can invite them to India and use India as a test bed to co-develop solutions for healthcare, energy, education that can be deployed initially within India, but also in other developing countries and even regional. So this is really what I invite you to think about, like how can you really more and more think and act globally, even though you are really not solid rooted India, with a sense of Indianness. And there are two examples I want to close with and part of where we are trying to do exactly what this, which is co-create solutions by combining, integrating the best of the North, South, East, West. This is called Africa for Tech, where we are bringing together entrepreneurs from Europe and Africa over 3 days to co-create frugal solutions for healthcare, energy, mobility, and food, transportation and food that could be applicable and relevant not only for Africa, but for rich countries as well. And then I was in Mumbai recently, last week, at Makers Asylum, where we brought together 100 students from across India and from France to again get them to co-create 17 projects they worked on that address the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations. This is a fantastic way for these kids to learn from each other, understand the same problem from different perspectives, and have a sense of ownership of these global problems, and a sense of ownership of the solution as well. And then so I would just kind of conclude with this important invitation, which is also the title of my next book, which as soon as I go back, this is my next project, to start writing this next book. So invite you to really, co-build this conscious society beyond the economy, right? Where we're able to balance well-being and well-having. Because well-being is important, right? This makes no logical sense that we need to take care of physical, mental, spiritual well-being. but also, right, millions of people who are devoid of basic goods and services. So some well-having is not defined. So actually what matters is to find that balance. And India is all about harmony and balance. So this is why I think that the Bindu, which is the consciousness, with the right consciousness, you won't see them as opposites. But the West has been too much about this. The East has been too much about this. And we have to bring them together. And this is why I think this consciousness will, allow you to find that integration and the synthesis of these two dimensions, of what life is about, which is to balance, well-having and well-being. So with that, I want to thank you for your attention, and I would love to hear some questions, although I guess that some of you are thinking about getting the car back home and getting the metro as well. So I won't hold you against, you if you have to leave as well. But, so thank you very much, and let's find out. Yes. Where's the mic?
My name is Chandra Doctor. My question is, we already experience in India a lot of entrepreneurs developing such kind of innovative products. But the surprising thing is these products never get, commercialized, or they are just limited to that particular zone only, and people, only few selected people know that they are such products. So, what I feel, we can develop some kind of platform through which we can spread the awareness about if there is one particular product which can tackle or satisfy the need of so if we can make that thing, that information spread to other parts of the country or maybe beyond continents like Africa. So that will be a very, so what I think this is the,
way to spread the best practices.
Exactly.
Innovations, yes. So yeah. So, is that the question? I just want to, you want to kind of see how we get it done?
I don't have any information regarding whether that is happening or not, so
yes.
I wanted your
Yes. Yeah, I think, thank you for saying that. So this is something I said in this trip, that the World Bank in a report in 2005, which is very interesting on the knowledge economy. How can India build the knowledge economy? When you say innovation, I would say it's not just about a finished product. It could be the knowledge about how to do something, how to create a solution, what is the way to deal with the problem, the kind of knowledge and best practices, right? And they first, the World Bank report said that if within India, if you find a way, a mechanism by which you can share these best practices in different fields, India can increase the GDP by 2.5%. That's the power of sharing knowledge. Now, having said that, there are one initiative I can think of, which is in the agricultural sector. It's called Digital Green, digitalgreen.org. And this is something created by alumni from Microsoft Research Labs in Europe. It's basically YouTube meets American Idol for farmers. So what happens is that if a farmer has a best practice, he came up with an innovative solution to overcome like drip irrigation, some technique, right? What they do is they actually video film it, and then they upload it. And then another farmer, let's say it happens in Karnataka, another farmer in Bihar can look at it. By the way, it's all subtitled in different languages. So I think they use Google to translate something very interesting by the way alone. So they can see the local language, what the innovation is about, and say, hey, I have an application here. So an NGO in Bihar can help them, because it's not about copy paste. You have to take it and adapt it to local context. And then once they do that, they see that it works, and then they can take it and upload it their version of it. It adds more to the solution. And then more importantly, it's like YouTube, you can see how many likes there are. You also see that which ones are more popular. If you want them to invest in the ones that are most promising, you get many feedback as well. Right? So this is a platform that exists for farmers, digitalgreen.org. And likewise, we probably need more platforms. And I think that right now, the problem in India is that we have islands of knowledge. And when I talked about this vision of decentralization, which was the Gandhian vision, right, as you know, that every village becomes self-sufficient. And the problem with that vision, I mean, he did it in the 40s, and I think it's spot on. That's where we have to go. But now with the internet, I would add a twist to the kind of more kind of Swadeshi self-reliant approach, is that you can make these hubs, small hubs, interconnected. So suddenly, that's what I mean, right? You can be globally aware of what's happening, bring that, apply it here. And conversely, if you come up with an interesting solution, you can share. And that's what the World Bank is saying. Right? So we have to go to modular, smaller units of production, except that they have to be, I think, if possible, digitally enabled, bigger movement, etc. But more importantly, we need to have a mechanism for what I call accelerated learning. India has to become a learning society. The way to do that is by eliminating these islands, interconnecting these islands of knowledge. And I think it can be done in farming, it's happening. Another sector would be in medical field, which I think would be very promising. And maybe you guys can make it as a project here at school. Pick an area that you are most interested in. For example, food, it could be water, that is my favorite one. Because I know that we go down, from what I understood, that water is like the issue right here. Right? So start, that's another thing, right? Forget about sharing the world, right? Go down as a problem, so let's make this a local problem here. Field of study, right? And as I said, nail in the food. Right? And say, what can we do to kind of begin to share knowledge around, like, how do we, I don't like saving rainwater. I don't know, like, you can figure out a way, right? Within right here, you can start doing it by tapping into what work has been done elsewhere. And what are the experimentation you do here to share that learning with others? So pick a field, I won't say field, sorry, pick a need that you're going to face soon. Whether it's food, it's water, health, whatever you're passionate about. Other questions, remarks? Or anything you have done in the same vein, any kind of projects you're working on that joins this idea of frugality, or any insights you want to share about your own journey in trying to become conscious and the challenges you're facing? It doesn't have to be a question, of course, I think that in the spirit of sharing. I know at the end of the day, I didn't bring samosa and chai, so keep your attention live. I know probably the Mondays will be difficult, right? First day of the week, and so I mean, yeah, you have my email address, so feel free to send me an email if you have any questions, and check out a couple of the websites as you mentioned, for the presentation. But again, seriously, I'm so delighted to conclude my trip here, because from the kind of values-based education that is being given here, I think that, see, one other thing about consciousness is that it's something that I believe that can be taught in the education system. And this morning with Mr. Jagan, probably him, we were discussing about it, how do we bring more consciousness into the classroom. And that's why I think that I'm very proud that this is one of the unique schools I know in India that actually is trying to use a different kind of teaching method, kind of pedagogical tools, peer learning and things like that to help you, become more conscious. So, but once you graduate here, I mean, take everything you learn here and replicate that elsewhere. Because the clock is ticking, and in Silicon Valley they're already talking about transhumanism. The fact that robots and AI will eclipse humans and everything. So I think there's an urgency, that we create a new group of leaders like yourself who are more conscious, who believe. Sadhguru always said that instead of trying to become Superman, must realize that being human is superb. And so we barely discover, right, what it is to be human. Instead, we are thinking about colonizing Mars. And so I think, what you are trying to do here at Soil is going to have a huge impact. Not in India, they provide a template, to how to kind of train the next generation leaders. So thank you again, and we'll be happy to, informally chat with you, before you guys go. All right, thanks, guys. Thank you very much.